Now you're going to see on camera with us Trae Duley, who is the senior planner for the City of Crestview, and I'm hoping that he's going to help me take this message back to our council members, CRA members, and everybody else, as well as what you're going to see on video. The story of, in today's case, what Woodstock has done and what I saw originally over in Kennesaw. And we've been talking, but I have a quick question I wanted to ask you, Brian. You mentioned this splash, or whatever that is. I remember reading about that in one of the Life in Cobb County things. That is a local option sales tax. Now, in our cases, the county and the cities have to agree, and we have, 12 or 13 municipalities, I think, in Okaloosa County. We've got a couple of them that only have like 180 people, 200, 300 people, but they're a city government, and so they all have to agree. Our major towns, of course, Crestview now is the largest, the county seat, but then it has to be in a county-city agreement. The voters approve that special option. It has a sunset date. The school board has done that in the past to get money. Now, is yours a county-wide, or can it be done in a single municipality?
So the SPLOS is required to be done county-wide, so it's very similar to what you just described, and they take the allocation of that and distribute it based on the population of the city. So we're the biggest city in the county, and we'll get, I think, 12% of the total dollars coming in for our SPLOS, because we're 12% of the population of the county.
Right.
There is another funding mechanism that I believe is newer in the state of Georgia. It's only sort of popped up recently, called a LOS, which is a local option sales tax, that some communities have tried to go after, sort of unsuccessfully. I think to this point we've never discussed that as an option to date.
Okay. Trae?
One thing I was going to mention, it sounds like from the very beginning of this, one of your critical points is communication. You said you had a rapport with your other departments. Are there any times where that breaks down that you would have some insight on how to fix that or make that better?
I just think regular communication. Everybody gets tied up in their own world, and especially me being sort of not in the same facility. I can't walk down to their office. Sometimes they forget I'm over here, and I forget they're over there, and we're about 7 miles away. But we do, like I said, we set up, we meet as a staff. So every city department director and our city manager and our mayor meet every Monday morning.
Citywide, they all meet.
We all meet together, and a lot of times it's to go over the agenda for the next council meeting, which is when the mayor is involved. But it's also just to talk about what's going on in their department or whatever. So we do that, and then our city manager, who's been here since 2008, also has a background in economic development, actually in Alabama, and was in Orange Beach for a very long time, which I guess is down in your neck of the woods. So he and I and our community development director also meet after that staff meeting and talk about any development issues. So they're not long meetings. I mean, normally we're out of there by 9, but it's at least a good opportunity for us to say, hey, what's going on with the Costco or what's this, I see the zoning applications. We also have what we call a development process committee, which is all the people who are involved with the development process, I guess, is the name of it. So it's the fire department, public works and all that, and they hold every Wednesday. They hold open for development meetings. So if you're a developer and you're looking to develop, or if you're going through a zoning application or an annexation application, Wednesdays are available for you to get all 10 or so of those people in the room at one time to ask questions. And it could be as simple as, here's my napkin sketch. What do you guys think of that? To, how do I get my fire access around? So it's a really good way of them all in the development process. I try to stay out of that a little bit unless it's sort of one of my clients that I'm bringing to the table. So working on an economic development project, which, ours are small in nature at this point. We're not doing the county economic development office across the hall is the one who brings in the manufacturing facilities and the office buildings and stuff like that. If we have a site that's appropriate for them, we work directly with them to sort of get that out there to them.
So y'all meet weekly?
We as a staff, and when I say staff, it's all of the department heads. We meet every Monday morning at 8:30.
And then basically, which for us is the TRC.
I was going to say that. It's like our TRC, Technical Review Committee. Yeah.
We meet once a month. You guys meet once a week.
Well, I think it depends on who needs meetings. They don't just sit around waiting on somebody to walk in the door. It's all appointment based. Mm-hmm. So they try to back them up. So it's like ABC. During the recession, we might have been meeting once a month.
Okay.
Now I know they've got 4 or 5 every Wednesday because that's how many projects are going on right now.
So that's impressive.
Yeah.
Something that I was going to touch on earlier. You said that most of your community goes out for employment. How many people do you capture to feed the businesses? A business has to have clientele. Where are their clientele coming from? Is their clientele local residents, or are you getting people from out of town coming here as a destination?
You're talking about like during the day or just anytime?
Anytime.
I think there's 2 things to that. We've got a regional outlet mall that's in the city. It's about 2 miles north of downtown. So we capture a lot of people from there. And we've tried to do a really good job of marketing with them to help them push people to downtown Woodstock. So when you're done shopping at the mall, go check out downtown. We also have developed and are one of the biggest mountain bike destinations in the world. We've got 30 miles of mountain bike trails in 2 different parks, one in the city, one north of the city. And the one north of the city is called Blankets Creek, and it's been in the top 10 mountain bike destinations in the world for several years since they started building it. And when we added the Roadmo Park section, we started seeing people actually stay overnight because 15 miles isn't enough for them to stay overnight. So if they're coming from Florida, which is where a lot of them were coming, Florida or South Georgia or Alabama, they would stop and ride the 15 miles and they'd keep going to North Carolina. Now we're capturing them here because we have enough for them to do. And then lastly is youth sports drives a lot of kids here. So if you come down here on a Saturday afternoon, you'll see baseball players, softball players. We've got an aquatic center that the city or the county built north of us. So we've got a huge softball complex, an aquatic center, and probably one of the premier youth baseball organizations in the world is about 5 miles south of here. And they've partnered with something called Lake Point, which is a huge sporting destination. It's about 20 miles from here. But we've advertised and put stuff out there for if you have a couple hours in between the game, come check
Is this
us
the new thing that's going further up 75?
Yeah, Lake Point's in
right. That's
city
the one
called
that
Emerson.
some of the former Braves guys are involved in. I remember that. Yeah,
it's ginormous.
Yeah.
What's just trying to think back, that's the discussion currently in our city is the recreation facilities and lack thereof. What is the ballpark budget for the city?
For recreation?
For our entirety.
Oh, I think our general fund is $17 million maybe.
And that gets spread out to all the other departments.
And then we've got a water sewer fund on top of that because we do own our own water department. I have no idea how much that is. I want to say our total budget's probably around 30, so that may be close.
We're 35. Sometimes we're in the 30s.
That's what I'm looking at is so comparing the budgets to what facilities you're able to maintain.
Now, I will tell you that our parks and recreation, most of those places I just mentioned were county parks. So that's a different thing. Now, they are not actually... We have one recreation facility that's maintained, that's a county facility that is within the city limits. The rest of them are just sort of city limit adjacent. So we also in 2008 did a master plan for parks and recreation, and we sort of said, well, the county does a really good job with the ball fields and the softball fields. We're not going to recreate the wheel. So all of ours is either passive or trails. That's the other thing. When I mentioned the arts center earlier, we've invested heavily in trail development. Multi-use trail development, the mountain bike trails. We've built beginner mountain bike trails in one of our parks that just sort of have this weird, space, and it only costs, $25,000 to build these trails or something like that. So we sort of do low-hanging fruit stuff. And the trail, we have a multi-use trail that leaves downtown a block behind the west side. Where did you eat dinner last night? Mad Life.
Yeah.
So a block behind that.
Yeah, we went back behind it. We saw that big retaining thing you've got down there, and then we saw a trail going behind it.
Yeah, it goes a mile and a half. So it goes a mile and a half and it dead ends, and we have 200,000 people a year use that trail. And all it does is dead end. 200,000. We've got counters out there. Now we're working on another project which takes it under the interstate and takes it to Town Lake, which is a huge master plan community on the other side of the interstate. So it'll open up access to downtown for them, and we've got long-term plans to connect it actually to Kennesaw.
And all these plans, your recreation plan, your master, all these, who defined those plans? Was it your planning and zoning or economic, or all of you together?
It depends. So at the time, we didn't have a Parks and Recreation department. So really, that trail and green space plan I ran as the city planner. We've sort of handed over maintenance and development of the trails to our Parks and Rec department. I sort of maintain control of the planning of the trail stuff just because it's my baby and I didn't want to give it up. So it's sort of weird that it's, I work with the planning and with the Parks and Rec now we just did an update on that plan, and, Parks and Rec kind of director presented what we've done so far, and I did, here's the updates that we're doing. So really it should fall in our planning department, but it's just something that has been a passion of mine. I started a nonprofit around it to help raise private money for it.
So your funding for all these construction projects did not necessarily come out of your budget. They came from grants and...
Yeah, some grants. The mountain bike trails we funded mostly locally because, again, they're cheap. I want to say the 15 miles we put in at Rope Mill may have cost us $300,000, and we probably have 300,000 visitors a year out there. And then there's a private organization that maintains those called Southern Off-Road Bike Association, or SORBA, and they've got different chapters. So they maintain the entire thing. They build it, they maintain it. We gave them money to it. There's no, other than our training that our EMS and Parks and Rec guys do to help find people with broken feet and stuff. There's not much ongoing stuff. So
who actually owns all the trails?
It's on that particular park is on Corps of Engineers property that the city leases from the Corps of Engineers. So it's in a city park on Corps of Engineers property. Okay. So the city technically, I guess, owns the trails, but we have no responsibility for maintenance of them at all. Now, the multi-use trails, we have a full-time maintenance crew that goes down and mows and blows and keeps the kudzu back and stuff like that on the trails. And we sort of have all these segments, and that's another thing we did with the Trail Master Plan. After we did that, we hooked it to our comprehensive plan and said it's part of our comprehensive plan now. And when a developer comes in and they see that little line that goes across their property, they have to put that trail in. So if you go out around the outlet mall...
If you pre-planned it, everything's there.
Yeah, if you go out around the outlet mall, it's a roadside trail. It's right next to the road. You've got the landscape strip and then the trail, but the outlet mall was required to put in a 10-foot wide trail instead of a 5-foot sidewalk. So we probably have gotten 3 miles donated by developers by adding it to our comprehensive plan. And now the residential developers and even the commercial developers are all like, we'll build the trail. We don't even have a problem with it anymore because they see how much activity it brings, or specifically for the residential developers, to draw why people want to live there because they can get out on the trail and go.
Now, speaking of that trail, can the people, when they're here at the end of it near Woodstock, can they get from there down here to Main Street to the restaurants?
They can. The trail does. There is a connection up the hill from Market Street is a block off Main Street. And there is a connection that we did after the trail went in. We turned Elm Street into a one-way street and expanded the trail on the other side.
Okay. Are there signage saying, come eat downtown as you're coming this way on the trail?
It says welcome to downtown Woodstock.
Okay.
But I think most of the people already know they can go eat and drink.
You've got plenty of places. And
that's the other thing we've done too that I'll mention that's made it really popular for our restaurants is we've relaxed a lot of our alcohol codes. When I started here in 2006, I don't even know that a restaurant could have a liquor license in the central business district. They could have beer and wine, but they couldn't serve liquor. So they changed that before I got here because we had a restaurant coming in. But we did things, the state went in and said you don't have to have your outdoor space with a fence around it anymore. So we removed that from our code. So you'll see a lot of sidewalk cafes that don't have, you don't feel like you're sitting in jail. About a year ago, we actually passed an open container district. So you actually can walk out of a restaurant with a plastic cup with your beverage in it. So what that's done is allowed people who are waiting, 45 minutes or an hour for a table to go shopping while they're waiting.
Has that created a disaster with drunks and bums walking around?
We've had absolutely no problems with it.
None.
Good. Now, I know we're waiting in Crestview for that ordinance to get drafted and get to the council that has already gotten preliminary approval. So you've just heard a success story from a very successful city with 22 restaurants downtown right now. Crestview, are you paying attention? Hope so. Brian, we just appreciate your time so much. I know I told you 25 minutes, but I told Trae, once we start our conversation, we don't need written questions.
Yeah.
Everything because I often tell people, if I ask you a question and you can't answer it, my next question is going to be, how did you get this job?
Yeah.
Because you're going to talk about what you're doing great, and obviously Woodstock is a great success story, and there were other. I mean, I remember when Sewanee was nothing. When I would go through there when the Falcons were out there with training, and now Sewanee's another one of these town center concepts, and this is the direction that many of us feel that our community, Crestview in particular, this is where we need to go to provide the life for all the younger people who are moving to our area.
Well, and I'll mention one more thing, because I think you guys have to go to Kennesaw, right?
Yeah, we're okay.
We've got the two things that I think Woodstock has been really successful about, and Sewanee to some extent, is allowing people to live downtown. Mm-hmm. I mean, we now have probably 1,000 residential units, so if you take 1,000 times 2.4 kids or whatever it is these days, that's what you've got. But the other thing, you see a lot of these new urban communities, and they sort of get built in the middle of nowhere, and they have commercial space. I mean, I visited a lot of them when I started here, and I was in planning school at Georgia Tech and studying all this stuff. And I have a stepson who played hockey in St. Louis, and we drove out to this new urban community outside of St. Louis, and it was literally in the middle of the cow field or in the cornfield. And they were wondering why their commercial stuff isn't successful. Well, because the 300 residents can't support the commercial stuff. Mm-hmm. And no other normal person. So if you have people doing the new urban stuff in I know that Florida Panhandle has a lot of that stuff along there, mm-hmm. sort of where it was born, right? If you can really take that concept and put it in an existing downtown, I think it would be very successful, the same way we've seen that here.
So. One more quick thing. Yeah. You mentioned that the area of East Main Street and East was manufactured mobile homes then, right? Modular homes?
It was maybe 4 or 5 families that owned 4 or 5 parcels, and they may have each had, 1 or 2 on the property. It wasn't like a mobile home park or anything like that. Yeah.
But it was nothing like it is today.
Correct. Nothing like it.
That's fantastic. Well, we appreciate it. And folks, you're going to have, during the course of the video, you will see a lot of video shots while we're talking of what is in downtown Woodstock, Georgia. And all I can say, we encourage you to come up here. If you're coming to a Braves game, it's really easy. There's plenty of hotels, and if you stay in any one that are in the Woodstock area, you're going to be helping this downtown growth of Woodstock. I like that concept of the hotel-motel tax. We've talked about it before. We have what's called tourist development tax, but in Florida, they're very restrictive. We've got to see how we can deal with that and what we can do with that money. So that's interesting Z-Files from Woodstock, Georgia. Thank you for watching. Thanks to Trae for coming up, and thanks to Teresa for letting me bring him here. I think I will now have a fellow spokesperson to speak out on what can be done in historic downtown Crestview.